already, right? So therefore, we are going to commence our program, the song. So good evening, honorable senior, junior, and also the countries or the students, and also the distinguished scholar, all the Dhamma friends. It is my great pleasure and honor to warmly welcome all of you, each country student or different university students. Tonight is the second night of the first week of the Magudharama Research Methodology course as the annual seminar or the annual research seminar. It is designed to provide this course the essential guidance and also skill for the academic research. It also the very opportunity for both young scholar and experienced researcher to strengthen their understanding of the research principle or methodology and academic writing. So in particular, we are honored by the presence of the Professor Asanga Tilakaratne, who has generously agreed to share his valuable and honorable experience research with us. This insight will certainly enrich the learning experience of the participants. So tonight we have the 5 agendas to commence our program. So firstly, we also would like to open the opening ceremony by reciting the Namo Tassa 3 times. Secondly, our great professor, Asanga will give the lecturer under his topic. And thirdly, question and answer. Fourthly, the acknowledge to him when the Venerable Visuddha, Venerable Tassara. And then we can write out our tonight program by reciting the Buddha Sasana student data. So therefore, first of all, among the 5 agenda for the tonight programs, firstly, we had to open our ceremony by reciting this Namo Tassa 3 times. So therefore, the Professor Asanga Tilakaratne and all of the participants and all of the committees, I would like to all of you request you to recite Buddha's Sasana, and Namo Tassa 3 times by reciting Namo Tassa 3 times to open the tonight the ceremony.
Namo Tassa
We have finished the opening the ceremony. Now we are going to continue the second agendas. So before conducting the second agendas, I would like to express the Professor Asanga Tilakaratne about the highest position in academic work in brief. Professor Asanga Tilakaratne is the emeritus and distinguished scholar in the field of Bali and Buddhist studies. He was formerly the senior professor of the chair of the Department of Buddhist Studies at the University of Colombo. Furthermore, he serves as the director of the Postgraduate Institute of Bali and Buddhist Studies, University of Kelaniya. And then throughout his teaching career, he has taught at several Buddhist universities across Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and foreign other countries, Korea, India, also USA, UK, and so on, so many countries. So at present, he serves as the Dean of the Faculty of Graduate Study at the Nagananda International Institute of the Buddhist Study in Sri Lanka. So this is his greatest position of his university. He also has done the many article and also the separate book in not only English media but also the similar medias. So this is the highest position of the academic Buddhist study in Greek. So now we also I also don't want to spend too much time, the valuable time for the program at the beginning program. So therefore, it's time to now commence our tonight programs. So for the second agenda, so to commence this program, so I had to invite the Professor Asanga Tilakaratne. So therefore, Sir Professor Asanga Tilakaratne, I would like to invite you to deliver your valuable and insightful academic research course or lecturer for us. Now it's time to commence for you. Thank you, Professor. You can contest according to your timetable, sir.
Thank you very much, Venerable. Thank you very much, Venerable Revata, for your very generous introduction. By the way, can you see me?
No.
No, I switched on my camera, but I also cannot see me. I don't know how to fix it, but I have on my video, but so it looks like I'm invisible. I don't know whether you can do anything from your side, but it looks like that my video is on, but maybe you can't see me. But anyway, that should not be a big issue. So this evening, I'm really happy. First to learn that Myanmar Researchers Association in Sri Lanka. In fact, I have taught in Myanmar also, but for a number of years, I have been associating with Myanmar Buddhist monks and nuns, and also householder scholars in Buddhist studies from Myanmar, but I did not know that there was this kind of organization that you have set up, Myanmar Researchers Association in Sri Lanka. So it is a very welcome thing to know that. And then this is, I understand that sixth annual seminar. So you have been doing it for some time. So I'm really happy to be with you this evening. So very good evening to everybody, venerable monks, ladies and gentlemen, all scholars from Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and many other places. So let me get into the theme. The theme given to me is how Buddhist teachings academically studied in prominent universities such as Oxford, Cambridge, opportunities and challenges. Now, when I read this topic given to me, I feel that I should be an expert to talk about big universities like Oxford and Cambridge and other universities. But my formal association for my own graduate studies and formative academic studies have been Peradeniya University, and before that Anuradhapura Buddha Shravaka Dharmapitaya, and then I did my MA and PhD studies in University of Hawaii, that is United States. So sorry, my first-hand experience in academic systems and how Buddhism is being studied academically in prominent universities So my experience is basically um, University of Hawaii and some other American universities. However, in 1999-2000, I was in Oxford University for 1 year as a Commonwealth Senior Fellow. So that was my, again, close association with English university system. And then while I was there, I remember a couple of times visiting Cambridge. In fact, for me, the very first curiosity to visit Cambridge was because when I was studying Western philosophy, among other things, I studied Wittgenstein, and then also I was reading about his life and his quarters in Cambridge University. In fact, I just really wanted to go and see his rooms. And so when I finally went in there, they were very kind to me and they conducted me to the room he occupied. However, it was being occupied by some other scholar. But again, he also was very generous. He allowed me to have a peep towards this Wittgenstein room. So then, of course, I took part in one or two workshops and meetings in Cambridge University. Anyhow, this is my acquaintance with these two great universities in England. And of course, I have visited and did some academic work in, other universities in England. Including where Professor Rupert Getting is. Okay, so anyhow, apart from that gossip, when I look at how Buddhist teachings are academically studied in, say, prominent universities, if I may take, now we know that traditionally in Sri Lanka, in Myanmar, and in other traditional Buddhist countries, learning Buddhism has been there all the time because learning the Dhamma is essential part of the practice. Now, if you do not know the Dhamma, you cannot practice it. So as a result, we know that from the very beginning, the idea was Sunatha, Dharetha, and Charatha. So you have to listen to the Dhamma, you have to learn it, and then you have to keep it in mind, and then you have to practice. Okay, so from that perspective, Myanmar, Thailand, Sri Lanka, particularly if we talk about the Theravada and South Asian countries, it has been very much the age-old practice. And it is the same with, of course, Japan, China, and also the Vajrayana Buddhist countries like Tibet. So in the entire Buddhist tradition, learning the Dhamma, learning has been an essential part. However, here in this context, I think we are talking about the modern academic studies of Buddhism. Now, when we say modern academic studies of Buddhism, in fact, idea is that you are studying Buddhism as one other, among many other subjects, as one subject. And then initially, say about several decades ago, we were thinking of what in the scientific field they talk about objectivity. The idea was to study the Buddhism as a subject objectively. Today, of course, among the social scientists themselves, there are different ideas about objectivity, so I don't want to go into those things. But anyhow, the idea was you look at the Dhamma from outside, objectively, and you look at it critically, that sort of thing. And then we know that when we talk about the Theravada studies, we can say properly started from 1881, when Pali Text Society was started in England by Rhys Davids, and texts were translated into English. This admirable process still continues, and then the texts were printed. In fact, it is very interesting to know that some of the Pali texts were, I think, printed in England before they were printed in the traditional Buddhist countries. And also some of these were translated into, of course, into English. You have to do it that in an English-speaking society. But to any language other than Pali also is fairly, in a way, at least for some texts, it has been a new thing. So now, with the textual study of Buddhism, which started in England and subsequently spreading around the world, we know that during that period there was a conception of Buddhism. Particularly, we are talking about England and Europe, where some type of the Enlightenment, the kind of post-Enlightenment period where rationality, logicality, and the rational outlook, these things were in vogue, and also in European society as a result of new developments in human knowledge, such as Charles Darwin, Darwinism, and Karl Marx, Marxism. And, with this kind of developments, on the one hand, in Europe and England, we can see that the concept of God was challenged, and so there was this Enlightenment movement where people were moving more towards empiricism and out of mysticism, out of metaphysics. So we have to understand that particular state of society during that period. So it was kind of very interesting to see that the Buddhism fitted into the picture of a rational religion. So it didn't have God, it didn't have soul. Kalama Sutta was popular. So people were, it's kind of, it fitted into the picture of, rational religion. Religion without belief in soul. Religion without belief in God. So now here you can see that as a result of this picture, there arose a conception of Buddhism as something to be pure Buddhism or pure Buddhism, early Buddhism, Buddhism with pristine purity. And along with this attitude, they also viewed whatever the suttas and the commentaries that were dealing with heavens, hells, and all sorts of that type of things. People thought that they were kind of fancy things added to the system later. What I'm trying to tell you is, this whole conception of early Buddhism. traditional Buddhist countries, we know that we didn't have a concept called early Buddhism. Even today, our traditional Buddhist scholarship doesn't recognize. The idea was that you read the Tripitaka, you read the Sutta, and then you look at Buddha Ghosha or Dhammapala to understand. So that was taken for granted. So there was no distinction between commentary and so that was the situation. Traditional Buddhist countries, however, the idea was that there was an early Buddhism. This particular picture, I'm trying to give you an idea about when we talk about academic study of Buddhism. Actually, we are talking about something different from traditional study of Buddhism, where traditional study, even today, as we know, in countries like Myanmar, in Sri Lanka also, but it is kind of disappearing from this country gradually. But in Myanmar, still it is very strong that the students memorize the text and then they sit by the teachers or consult text and the commentaries, and that's the way to study. However, when we talk about academic study of Buddhism, we are talking about this kind of constructions, and also keeping those things in mind. Don't misunderstand. I'm not being negative about these new developments, but this difference between the traditional way of looking at and also the more modern ways of looking. Now, anyhow, when we talk about academic study of Buddhism, now we are talking about Buddhism. The Buddhist studies develop in particularly outside traditional Buddhist countries. Buddhist studies develop based on the textual interpretation, and initially it was the idea was to need for the dig into the what is called original Buddhism or pure Buddhism or the early Buddhism, that sort of thing. Now, when we look at the academic Buddhist studies today in this modern sense, roughly there is a division, say for in Europe and also in England on the one hand, and the United States on the other. I remember several years ago, maybe 2012 or something, there was a conference. It was convened in Thailand. The conference on the status of Buddhist studies all over the world. So there were scholars from virtually all the major Buddhist studies countries, including traditional countries like Sri Lanka. So I was supposed to represent Sri Lankan scholarship, and in this the meeting there were people like Professor Richard Gomrich and others from England, and also gosh, I don't remember the name, but some leading professors from United States. And then I remember in this meeting there was actually a debate at some point, even to the extent of becoming bitter, about the how to do the Buddhist studies. So the scholars from England and also from Europe were emphasizing on textual studies, the importance of the textual studies, and not really sort of willing to identify other types of studies as Buddhist studies proper. Now, other types of studies means basically what we call sociological, anthropological, ethnographic type of studies. And then I remember this professor from United States was arguing that, arguing his case that, the Buddhist studies are much more than textual studies. And then anyway, the point I would like to make in this context is there is this sort of distinction. Now, more recently, I was reading about the Sri Lankan scholar and also the very well-known sociologist Gananath Obesekara. Now, Gananath is known in the world as the sociology scholar in sociology. He was teaching in Princeton University. Recently, he passed away in Sri Lanka. Now, although Gananath's research was, his perspective was sociology, ethnography, he's considered to be also a Buddhist scholar. Interesting thing is, in Sri Lankan context, Gananatha was not considered a Buddhist scholar. Now here you can see that what do we mean by Buddhist studies? Of course, I don't think nobody can. I don't think anybody can. Take away the significance of the textual studies, because text provide us with the basic information, and then based on that, we come to know things. However, at the beginning, as I said, at the the last part of the 19th century, the challenge was to translate the text, that were in Pali, in Sanskrit, and then subsequently in Chinese and Tibetan, into languages like English, Japanese, German, French, and so on. So you can understand during that period, end of the 19th century, and also the beginning part of 20th century, and even up to today, because when you particularly look, I think Pali text, maybe good number of Pali texts have been translated, but still we can't be sure. And also the translation may need, the more refined translation. So there is no end to it. But relatively, I would say that Pali text, entire Tripitaka, but again, not all the commentaries, only very few commentaries have been translated into English. So the textual study and the textual translation still remains very valid. However, when we look at the Buddhism, in the textual study type Buddhism, we are thinking about Buddhist study deriving from the text, from the books. What about the Buddhist society? What about the living Buddhist world? What about the Buddhists all over the place practicing Buddhism? And that sort of questions, in order to answer that sort of questions, you need to do a sociological study, and also to know how different societies have been studying Buddhism and practicing Buddhism, either monastic or lay societies, different traditional Buddhist countries. Text alone is not enough, but you have to really go into the maybe field to witness how people are doing that, that type of, the information. So therefore, there is, in a way, we can say still there is some kind of uneasy connection between, those scholars who are studying textual things and, who are doing sociological studies. But luckily, also we see that now the scholars do the textual studies, and maybe they read the text and try to reconstruct the text, and then try to interpret the text. And then when it come to the interpretation and the study, of course they are doing conceptual and doctrinal studies. So it is not merely constructing a text from number of palm leaf manuscripts. Maybe that age is past. Still there may be new discoveries, but today what I see is more positively textual studies are being done also along with conceptual and philosophical studies and also historical studies. So not only the textual study, but also you go beyond that text and to see the what is portrayed, the history or the society, and also the philosophical ideas. So in other words, we really don't need to think that these two fields are two completely different fields to alien to each other. As I tried to say at the a while ago, I don't think the significance of textual studies can be replaced by anything. You need to do textual studies. However, having done textual studies, maybe you need to go beyond it. So when I look at the academic studies today in the world, now, I think what is going to be useful, particularly large number of Burmese monks gathered here and also for others, what type of Buddhist study they should do, what should be the the theme they should study. Now, of course, academic Buddhist studies have been around for almost about now, more than 100 years. And at some point, to find proper and the good research topic or area of research in Buddhist studies was not very difficult. However, that situation is changing very fast. It is the very difficult, arduous job to find something that has not been studied by somebody else. But in my own instructions to my graduate students, I always say that, look, don't try to look for something that has never been done by anybody. Maybe you will not be able to do that. But anyway, the assumption behind that is, that anybody can say the final word about some subject. And I say to my own graduate student, that is a misconception. To believe that you or anybody can say the last word about particular text or particular matter is, I think, being too presumptuous. Maybe sometimes we are able to say that, but still we need to be humble enough to be open for the other possibilities or other possibilities of interpretation. So therefore, I don't think we need to really be worrying about looking for something not being studied or not being done by anybody else. You can go over and over, and if you think that you have something new to say, new interpretation, new way of looking at the text, new reconstruction, for the text. And also for the sociological studies, you can do the same thing. Now, therefore, I think for a student point of view, when we look at from the point of view of different types of studies, I think we need to be the ambitious enough to challenge the existing knowledge and try to find something new. Now, let me briefly discuss three aspects of major the areas of Buddhist studies: textual, and then conceptual, and sociological, anthropological, historical, but I will not be able to do really justice to all these areas. But when we look at textual studies, again, there is our to make a contrast. Traditional belief was that you have one correct way to translate a text. So therefore, you translate the text, and then usually others tend to accept that okay, that is the translation of the text. Now personally it happened to me. I remember when I retranslated Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamika Karika into Sinhala, we already had one Sinhala translation done by a very venerable monk who was professor in at the beginning stage of Vidyalankara University, today University of Kelaniya, and he was highly revered, respected Buddhist monk, scholar. So somebody asked from me, why do you have to retranslate it? Because already there is a translation. Then, of course, I had to explain why I had to do. I thought I should do the translation again. And now we know that, I mean, if we take Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamika Karika alone, I mean, I don't know how many translations in English have been done. I don't know how many translations in French and German or Italian language. But I know that in English language, there are a number of translations, and Kenneth Inada translated, and then before that Frederick Strang translated. I think then came Kenneth Inada translated, and then Kalupana translated, and then I think Chris anyway, another. So one or two translations based on the Tibetan text. Now, how can this be? Now, if Nagarjuna said something, and then if we know the Sanskrit grammar and the text very well, and then there should be one way to understand, one right way to understand the text, then how come there are several translations? Now, this is something very, very academically interesting question. Now, here, when I say this, today, in the particularly in the postmodernist type thinking, we think that any text is open for any number of interpretations. Now, there are the word text being used in a very wide, the wide sense, not only include the written text, but even a picture or work of art, anything can be a text. And then you can read. The idea is that you can read it the way you like. It is up to you to interpret it, I mean, now this idea is, the quite popular. So texts are, not bound. I mean, readers are not bound by the person who created that work, and then you can't go into the brain of the person, who wrote the book, who painted the painting. So, it's a hopeless thing. So you forget about that, and then you try to interpret it. So this is the kind of modern view. But interesting thing is, I think when we come to a subject like Buddhist philosophy, now particularly, as I said at the very beginning, practitioner learns the Dhamma in order to practice, hoping to achieve Magga Phala, right? This is basically what it is. So therefore, it's understood that there is only one right way to understand it. What the Buddha meant by this particular sutta, we need to understand it. So that shows that, there is always a limit to our translation. But this has been not a new problem. In a sense, the problem has been there from the very beginning. Even during the time of the Buddha, we know that there are many discourses where Buddha was trying to correct the wrong views. You remember the Bhikkhu Sati's case when he held that Vijnanam Sandhavati Sansarati Ananyam. He thought that is the Vijnana consciousness that goes around without change. Buddha was kind of, he was asking, where did I say this? Have I ever said this to you? So you can see that. Sorry, it was a a gross misunderstanding of the word of the Buddha. So the problem was there from the very beginning, and then we have commentaries. We think Buddha Ghosha, voice of the Buddha, Buddha Ghosha to be the voice of the Buddha. So, we traditionally, we did not suspect, we just went to the Buddha Ghosha and read it and understood the word of the Buddha according to Buddha Ghosha. But if you look at Buddha Ghosha himself, you can see that in addition to his commentarial annotations, he would use words like kechi, apare, and things like that. Purana. Now, what does this mean? Even for Buddha Ghosha, he has to refer to sometime kechi, sometime apare, sometime Purana. Now, this shows that even Buddha Ghosha was not sure. Even there were, the commentary. Now, what I'm trying to tell you is textual translation, textual study, and textual interpretation is a very, very challenging thing. But at the same time, now I gave you the case of Nagarjuna. Now, Nagarjuna's philosophy has been read from many different perspectives. Now, for Frederick Streng to translate it one point of view, Venerable monk who translated in Sri Lanka, for the first time, he thought that the Nagarjuna is, proper 100% Mahayanist, so then his translation came from that perception. And when Kalupahana translated, Kalupahana thought that no, Nagarjuna was restating what the Buddha said. Of course, that view is not only Kalupahana's view, even scholars like A.K. Warder, writing a paper a long time ago, is Nagarjuna a Mahayanist. So, now Nagarjuna has been very much been debated, particularly in the recent times. In fact, I would say out of the all Buddhist, classical Buddhist teachers, Nagarjuna may have been the most commented upon and interpreted the scholar. Okay, but we take any particular sutta, and then we have a very long tradition of practice based on the sutta, both in Sri Lanka and Myanmar. Now, if we believe that by reading the text and by understanding the text and by following the text, traditionally, people could attain Sotapatti, Sakadagami, Anagami, Arhanta, or jhanas, whatever. Now, that shows that there was right way to understand which was the established, which was established by the practice. So otherwise, we cannot have a story of practice for Buddhism. We do have a story of practice, and also we do have a story of modern day practice, particularly meditation, Myanmar meditation tradition, Mahasi Sayadaw, and many other meditation teachers. And then it coming to Yuba Kim, and then Goen Kaji, and it's a long meditation tradition, and there are many other meditation teachers also. Now we know that there is a right way to understand the text, and then we need to see what that right way is. So textual interpretation is an open thing. So I think right now the translations we have, for example, Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. Before that, we have early PTS translations like Rhys Davids and, I.B. Horner and, scholars like that. And today we have new translations. Again, you can see that the translation is an interpretation. You are translating means you are also interpreting. However, if you can go along with the grammar and also along with the style and the language and the linguistic tradition, I think still if you can translate and interpret the text, there is a room for that. Now, for example, when the scholars translated Nagarjuna, several scholars, I think all of those scholars were basically accepting the validity of the Sanskrit grammar and the grammatical rules and following those, the rules, honoring these rules they were trying to. But the interesting thing is, even going by according to the grammatical rules, still there there is room for different translations. Anyhow, nobody can give the last word or something, but what I'm trying to tell you is today, even up to today, the textual translation, textual interpretation, and textual study is a very strong thing. I said that lots of the Pali texts have been, studied and translated. However, that doesn't mean that in a country like Myanmar, there are, not the Tripitaka, but there are many other Pali texts still to be translated and collected and restored. And Fragile Palm Leaf Project was, executed by, I think Peter Skilling in Thailand, and they discovered, the large, the huge amount of text. So therefore, even within Pali tradition, and particularly even within Theravada tradition, there is quite a lot of room. And apart from that, particularly when I think about the Myanmar Buddhist scholars, Buddhist monks, I know that they are quite good in Pali. However, there is a less tendency for the Myanmar Buddhist scholars to go to Sanskrit and then go to Tibetan and go to classical Chinese. Actually, I think we need to, even we are from traditional Buddhist countries, we do have Pali, but we need to go into, maybe not everybody can do that, but need to go into Tibetan language and then particularly classical Chinese text. We know today, as I said at the beginning, the concept of early Buddhism, early last century, early Buddhism meant, by the early Buddhism, what was meant was Pali text. However, with the arrival of Chinese Agama, Taisho edition coming and becoming widespread, the concept of early Buddhism really underwent change. So, concept of early Buddhism is no longer Pali, only Pali text. The Pali Tripitaka text. Even in the Tripitaka, some texts are considered to be a little later. So, therefore, the concept of early Buddhism itself has undergone change. Sorry. And the scholars, like there are many scholars, more recent, like scholars like Analeo, and there are many others who have done comparative studies between Chinese Agama and the Nikaya. I remember I worked with Professor Kalupana. Kalupana used to look at Chinese text, and particularly when I remember when he, the translated and studied Nagarjuna's Mulamadhyamika Karika, and I remember in his book, he says that Kachayana Gotta Sutta is found in both, not only in Pali tradition, but also in Agama tradition, kind of establishing that Kachayana Sutta belongs to a very early period of Tripitaka. So like that, I think it is time for scholars from traditional Buddhist countries go into Tibetan studies, classical Chinese studies, and other type of studies. And I remember sometime people talk about Theravada studies or Buddhist studies in general, that we are very kind of self-satisfied and we think that we don't need to go into anything else. And so if we think that, okay, in Pali text we have everything, maybe if our goal is purely religious, maybe then it makes sense. But if we are also academics, and if we want to investigate things, and if we want to widen our, the sphere of knowledge, I think it is time for us to go into the particularly Tibetan and the classical Chinese. And also, I remember Kalupahana saying at some point that Tibetan is really a Buddhist language. Maybe what he meant is like, they use us, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm just repeating what he said. Maybe, like the self-referential terms are less in Tibetan language or something like that. But anyhow, I think we need to go into those aspects. And okay, from textual, let me go very briefly into what I consider to be conceptual studies. Again, conceptual studies are very, very interesting and very important. Now, when we look at conceptual studies, again, in the modern academic setup, we know that some of the very interesting and important textual studies have been done. Now, I have here with me The Buddhist Path to Awakening by Rupert Getting. Now, Rupert Getting, this is his PhD dissertation. It was first published in 1992. And if you are really looking at, the conceptual Dharma study based on the text. Of course, Rupert is a very good Pali scholar. And then if you take a text like the Buddhist Path to Awakening, you can see that how only within the Buddhist tradition, how you can do a deep study. I mean, Rupert's is not a comparative study. What I did for my PhD is a comparative study, but Rupert is not. So, I mean, something like that. And then also I have Selfless Mind by Peter Harvey. This again, English scholar. And then also I remember Selfless Person by, I think, Steve Collins. These are some of the very good examples of textual studies. However, another piece of gossip is when Steve Collins started teaching in United States. He published this, very Nirvana and other Buddhist felicities. And I remember one time discussing this book with, I think, with Professor Lars Cousins. And Lars Cousins observed that if you take Steve Collins' Selfless Persons, which is interpretative, but of course highly based on the textual study, but then his Nirvana and other felicities, he was observing that it sort of shows a shift towards more to sociological and that sort of more American type thing. I mean, not in a critical manner, but what he said is the difference between the two types of texts written by the same author. So the conceptual studies are very, very important. Conceptual studies can come up with, now, for example, the books I mentioned, Selfless Mind by Peter Harvey, and then the Selfless Mind by Peter Harvey, Selfless Persons by Lars Cousins, Steve Collins. Also, I remember the Eye of the Beholder, another text by, I think, Sue Hamilton. I means capital I, inverted commas, Eye of the Beholder, not EYEI. Now, it's again very interesting in Eye of the Beholder, which was published in, I think, around 2004 or 5 or something, now almost 20 years back. In Eye of the Beholder, Sue Hamilton was arguing that the entire Buddhist communities have misunderstood the Anatma concept. Actually, Buddha did not deny the concept of Atma. So you can see that. I think I had my some comments on that, and I remember writing those comments and sending those things directly to Sue Hamilton when I happened to be in I think Oxford by that time when I read the book. But anyhow, the point I want to make is this. Now, Mrs. Rhys Davids long time ago wanted to prove that the people have misunderstood the text and Buddha did hold some kind of Atmavada. And then after Mrs. Rhys Davids, that was in 1930s, I think, another roughly about more than half a century or 75 years, another English scholar trying to re-establish, or I mean, to visit in the same question. Anyway, it is I don't have any value judgment about it, but what I'm trying to tell you is interpretation or re-looking at text is unending. You can look at any particular problem, any particular issue, and try to see, come up with a different interpretation, different textual interpretation, different way of reading text, of course, grammatically and correctly. But still, you can, if you can come up with new evidence, things like that. So therefore, conceptual studies is another area open. But I again want to lay stress on this idea that you look at, there are many other, what I have right now in my hand is Rupert Getting's book. This is a very good example, I would say, how you really do a conceptual study based on the text, and also with reference to the other scholars who have been, studying similar themes. Okay, so this is basically, I think I should wind up, but textual studies, and then based on the grammar. Another very interesting textual study thing was a philological approach to Buddhism. The Buddhist, this was the series of speeches given by K.R. Norman. And then again, it's very interesting. When I, just for this discussion today, I had this copy with me. I looked at it again. Then I found this review done by, on this book, short review done by Richard Gombrich. So it's very interesting to see K.R. Norman associated with Cambridge, and then Richard Gombrich of Oxford University, and the very interesting manner. So the K.R. Norman thinks that he really kind of sarcastically claims that he doesn't know Buddhism, he only knows grammar, and so therefore and philology, so he looks at Buddhist concept from that point of view. But then in his short review, the Richard Gombrich approaches from a different point of view. He says, I'm quoting, Norman, a positivist, wants a secure foundation for our understanding of text. Now, when Richard Gombrich calls Norman a positivist, he has this philosophy of science debates in his mind, apparently. But alas, there is no such foundation. Now, we know that, again, this is a debate in particularly in the Western philosophy of science related debates. So there is improvement, but never final certainty. Now again, we are going into philosophy of science debates and things like that. I would like to point out, by reference to this debate, between Richard Gombrich and K.R. Norman, you need to go into the modern, particularly debates, particularly in modern, philosophy of science, philosophy of social science, philosophy of natural science, that type of debate. Again, I'm not saying that you all should go, but I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that it is very, very important for us to be knowledgeable on those developments. Otherwise, you will not be able to understand the nuances. Now, for example, if you were to read Richard Gombrich's this very short review of K.R. Norman's philological approach, I think without that type of background, it will be even difficult to understand. In other words, what I'm trying to build up is amidst all our textual, interpretational, conceptual studies, we also need to go into the broader methodological discussions and the knowledge, because not only we are using a particular method, but we should be able to justify that particular method we are using. So which is a very important thing. Now, you could say that, why should we, spend time or waste time, as you see, on the methodology? No, in fact, methodology, I mean, talking about method, justifying your method is also very, very important. And then, so in other words, what I'm trying to tell you is we can't be today only pure 100% Buddhist scholar, only confining ourselves to the Buddhist text and the field of Buddhist text. Even to make more meaningful the Buddhist textual tradition and the philosophy, we need to be aware of the methodological debates and what is going on, how people look at. Now, these are again very, very important things. So these are some of the possible areas. Having spoken to you almost now 1 hour, my message for you is particularly, I know that large majority of the participants are Burmese Buddhist monks, monastic scholars, in addition to other Buddhist nuns and other lay scholars from other countries. I think sometimes I see that there is frustration among the graduate student, thinking that they cannot find anything meaningful to do. Everything has been done by others. Of course, it is very natural. Anyone who enters the field at first, will get this kind of, frustrating feeling. I mean, but more you know about the field, more you associate with people, more you read things, this gradually disappears. And then you see that there is a wide world, academic world is open before you. So in other words, there is no end to textual studies. There is no end to conceptual studies. Even though, for example, Rupert Getting has studied Bodhipakya Dhamma, that doesn't mean that Rupert has said the last word on that. I mean, you can go into again, you can review Rupert, and then if you can come up with a new idea. So there is no end to any of these types of things. And sociological, anthropological, historical studies, I don't have time to go into, but very elementary suggestion I want to make is sometime the students come with proposals, saying that how this is in Burmese society, how Sila is practiced in Burmese society, and things like that. The moment you bring in the social aspect, of course, you can go to Visuddhimagga and you can study how Sila is being understood. But if you want to look at how Burmese people do that, it can be Sila, it can be merit making, or it can be anything. But then that requires for you to go into Burmese society, talk to people, observe people, try to collect material and so on. One of the very early the study on Burmese religious tradition, Michael Spiro's, the celebrated book on Burmese society, but that was in 1960s. He did this research in early 60s and 50s. However, now we are talking about 75 years after. So there should be so much to do if you think about sociological, anthropological, ethnographical studies. And again, you need to be aware of the methodological, the constraints and also methodological principles governing these areas of study. Now, my last point would be, if you look at in the Buddhist studies, Theravada, Vajrayana, Chinese, and so on, it is with sadness I notice that sometimes Theravada studies are not represented, particularly Theravada Buddhist scholars from traditional countries. One time I remember several years ago, Professor Richard Gombrich told me that I used to go to this International Association of Buddhist Studies conference, but lately I could not go. And then Professor Richard Gombrich told me about couple of years ago that there was the International Association of Buddhist Studies conference, and there had been some 600 of panels of different aspects of Buddhist studies, and he said that there was no one single one on Theravada study. Now, this is not a good thing. So therefore, I think for the students, particularly the research student like you and the scholars gathered in this forum, I think there is a lot of space for us to take Buddhist studies, particularly Theravada studies, to the other, juxtapose it with the other Buddhist studies, and also take it into the world. Now, finally, why do we have to take the Buddhist studies into the world? Because the Buddha taught this Dhamma out of compassion for the welfare of and the good of the society. I think that goal is the universal goal to be cherished by all those people, I mean, by us who try to follow the teaching of the Buddha. So there is much hope and reason for Buddhist studies to be continued. Okay, so I think I will wind up from that, opening this session for any questions you have. Thank you very much again for listening to me.
First off, thank you so much for your wide explanation. Another many topic of the Armed Buddhist teachings academically being studied in the Prominence University. So you also mainly based on Burmese tradition and also the textual study, and you wider explained about the conceptual study, comparative study, and sociological study, and historical study, and finally you also find out the methodological principle, also importantly. So we also learned from you too much about the wider explanation and wider study based on Buddhist subject. So based on textual study, we also have to learn how to extend so many subjects. So I also learned from you. This is my summarizing. So Professor, it is now time to that agenda. We are going to do the, according to that agenda, we are going to do the question and answer time. So, so therefore, before going to answering, so I will try to invite all the participants who want to ask any question regarding our professor tonight's explanation. So if you are not clear, and also further any question, so you also can ask. Now it's time to ask from you. It's also a great chance because we are difficult to meet our professor at the research methodological time. So therefore, we should not miss this great chance to ask the question to our Professor Asanga Tilakaratne. So I all warmly invite you to ask the question. So if you have questions, firstly, please raise your hands. I will invite the one by one and orally. After that, our dear professor will answer one by one. So therefore, be respectfully, please consider and also raise the question. I will invite one by one. So first of all,
if they have any questions, they can also write it in the chat box also, and also if you can, they can directly ask it from orally, whatever. And let me give a very brief answer to a question I get in the chat box. It says, I'm a new MPhil student, PGI PBS with an MBA from Euro University. his teaching in English. For my MPhil research, I want to connect my business background with Buddhist teachings. My idea is to develop a framework for sustainable business success based on the Vyagapajja Sutta and the Sigalovada Sutta. Okay, it's interesting. I want to say two things. One thing is very often, of course, it is a good thing you make use of your own background to do some new study. So this particular person who is asking the question coming from business, but what I see is very many occasions, if you come from medicine, people always think that they should do something medicine and Buddhism. If you come from law, they think that they should do something Buddhism and law. And in the same manner, so the person who is coming from business thinking that, I mean, in a way, I can see that, okay, you are making use of your own strength to, to be in a good, better position and then try to study Buddhism. So from that perspective, it is not bad at all. But at the same time, I want to say that simply because, I'm coming from some background, and also I see that some vague resemblances in the discourses. I don't think we can do a substantial research. Now, for example, if you want to talk about the sustainable business model or something, and also Buddhism. Now, of course, we know that Buddha did not have a concept of sustainable development or that type of economics, but even though the term is new, we can see whether really Buddha's teaching can be interpreted in that manner. In order to do that, the most challenging thing is, according to my understanding, you really need to go beyond the superficial seeming similarities and go into the very deep philosophical background of, I mean, what is the modern sustainable development as a critique of what does it come? What are the shortcomings it tries to address? And then you go the bottom of it. And then you get some substantial basis to study Buddhism. So therefore, I'm not economist, so I don't know anything about that. But what I'm trying to say to you is try to go deep into the philosophical or conceptual basis of modern economics and also the concept of sustainable development, how it is being practiced, at least in some areas, and then try to see whether Buddha has anything meaningful to say on that. Okay, thank you. Anything else, Venerable?
Yeah,
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So let me invite the Venerable Pinyananda. If you are ready, you can ask our professor.
Okay, there is another question. Reverend's question is, can you explain about Ma in Theravada Buddhism? You think Mara evil one? I mean, again, Venerable, I wish I had time, but you have to arrange a separate session for this because to talk about Mara just in a couple of minutes is so I will leave that question. But of course, you know what Buddha Ghosha says, and the different types of maras and all that. But what does it really mean? I think if I give a quick answer, I may be giving a wrong impression about my own understanding. So I will skip that question. Then another question is, you think, to what extent does the Western academic study of Buddhism reshape or reinterpret traditional understanding of Buddhist doctrine and practice? Actually, this is an important question. Now, when we talk about the practice of Buddhism, to my knowledge, actually the traditional practice of Buddhism, practice in the Theravada Buddhist countries, or for that matter, Mahayana or Vajrayana countries, I don't think it has been challenged by the modern scholarship. Now, modern scholarships looks critically. And as I said, also it tries to see objectively. But today, if we are looking at from a point of view of participant, not merely observer, but you are an observing person, but at the same time you take part, then, I mean, for me, I have not seen any substantial, any criticism coming, but people usually try to, they are happy with the practice. Now, for example, if you take modern application of mindfulness meditation, Satipatthana, now today it is being used by many, so many number of people, organizations, psychiatrics, and, all types of business people and all that, this meditation is being used. However, there is a question whether they are using it for right purposes or right mind. However, the basic practice remain the same. Now, we have to understand that today in the average, in the society, people are not trying to attain nirvana through mindfulness meditation. They try to gain some kind of mundane, day-to-day help from that. And I think it doesn't go against the word of the Buddha, because Satipatthana is also for soka pariddavanang samatikkamaya, dukkha domanassanang attangamaya. So if we think that Satipatthana can help us in our dukkha domanassa and things like that, I don't think it is a bad thing. But today what we see is people try to patent it, and people try to do all types of things. Sometimes, I mean, that aspect is the one we need to be very careful. So basically, if you take the modern interpretation of the Buddhism, particularly in the mainstream traditions, I mean, the scholarship, I don't see, I mean, I'm subject to correction, but I referred to Sue Hamilton's work on Eye of the Beholder. Now she is trying to say that all Buddhists have got it wrong and there is Atmavadi in Buddhism. Now, of course, that type of debate can go on, because if anatta understanding is what we gain ultimately by practice, I think there is substantial room for the discussion and debate in that type of thing. So, but apart from that, I think critical understanding is the doesn't, I mean, this is how I feel, challenge the basic system of practice. Now, for example, if I give you one local example, I remember Venerable Jnanananda, who wrote Concept and Reality. He gives interpretation to the concept papancha. Now, papancha sanya sanka samudaya charanti. Now, for papancha, commentary says tanha mana ditti sankhata papancha. So, the Buddha Goshen interpretation is tanha mana ditti, papancha. However, the Jnanananda came up with this new interpretation. For him, conceptual proliferation, the linguistic aspect. I mean, personally, I have a little bit of a problem with that interpretation. That's a different thing. But now here you can see that. So what is the conceptual proliferation? And the interesting thing is, although Jnanananda comes with one interpretation, Buddhaghosa comes with another interpretation, I do not see, I mean, Jnanananda's interpretation ultimately interprets the nature of the ultimate experience to be ineffable, something like that. But about ultimate experience, of course, the Venerable Jnanananda doesn't have a problem. So therefore, lots of debates, I would say, peripheral when it comes to practice. Now, if a scholar can come and tell, look, guys, all you Buddhist guys have got it wrong and do it in this manner, you can't attain nirvana from this or something, then I think that type of interpretation, if at all something like comes, we will have to be watchful about it and examining it. Okay. Then there's another question. Is it possible to study and interpret Buddhist teachings in the context of modern psychological studies? Now again, this is Venerable Kusala. Venerable, this is an interesting question, but when we say modern psychological studies, we are making a very broad generalization. Now, when we talk about the modern psychological studies, there are different schools of modern psychology, among which, the behaviorist psychology and, all types of. So the general answer that I can give you is Buddhist psychological teachings, Buddhist ideas can be viewed from psychological points of view meaningfully. For example, if we take one early Sri Lankan example, Padmasree De Silva, who wrote his PhD dissertation on Buddhist and Freudian psychology, he makes an interesting comparison between id, ego, and superego, and then the Kamatanha, Bhavatanha, Vibhavatanha, particularly Eros, Kamatanha, Thanatos, Vibhavatanha. Now, these are, of course, quite open for debate. But there are interesting ways to look at the Buddhist understanding of mind. But then, what is the concept of mind? That's again a fundamental question. So anyhow, my personal view is it can be enlightening in some points, looking from modern understanding, and particularly modern understanding comes in experimental research. So it would be enlightening. But only thing is whether we need to be careful about buying into all the categories. Now, for example, if we really buy into mind and matter kind of duality, the strict type of thing, then we are again in a bad situation. If you take Panchakhanda analysis, Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana, of course Rupa is there, but my understanding is that Panchakhanda analysis, Rupa is meant not because Rupa alone for human being can be meaningful without the other things, but of course Rupa material world is there. But when it comes to human being, of course it's always, although for analytical purposes, separate these things, you cannot really separate. So important thing is not to buy into the categories, all the categories imposed on those things, but be watchful about that. Okay.
Okay, sir. At the moment, there's no question in the chat box. Therefore, the Venerable, you are invited to ask the question.
Yes, thank you so much, Venerable, to give me chance to ask question. Sir, I would like to one question. Now according to your discussion, you talking about the methodology and conceptual studies. Nowadays, many students are using AI systems. So this AI systems, whatever we want to know, we can ask anything. So that AI system maybe it's dangerous for student or not. Why dangerous and what is the solution? I would like to know.
You are asking about AI
system, yes, sir.
artificial intelligence.
Yeah, AI system.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. It is a very timely, good question. Now, actually, my first reaction would be AI can be a very useful instrument for us to use in studies and, many other things. However, when it comes to academic studies, now, when I look at AI, now the stage before AI was I go to internet and then I type something I want and then I get the information I want, but then I have to sort the information out and then I have to sift it and then I have to use the information. However, with AI, you just pronounce the topic you want to study and AI would give you a whole lots of the information connected to that particular subject virtually. It's like AI is, doing your homework. Now, Venerable, this can be useful in many areas. However, when it comes to Dhamma, study of the Dhamma, now my argument is, I don't think it serves the purpose. It is self-defeating, because ultimately we need to understand the Dhamma. So that you study, and then you study the Dhamma, and then you try to produce a research paper or your term paper or dissertation or whatever from AI. But then the issue is whether you really understood what you are presenting in your name. Now, if you did not understand it, then whole issue is, what is your intellectual ownership of this? Are you the owner of this knowledge? Now, Venerable, we talk about in Buddhism, Sutame Panya, Chintame Panya, Bhavaname Panya. Sutame Panya is the basis. Without Sutame Panya for you, you can't do Chintame Panya. Without Chintame, you can't have Bhavaname Panya. Now, the problem is, if you are completely dependent on AI type external thing, then that knowledge is not really your knowledge. Then how are you going to think? With what? We cannot think in a vacuum. We have to have a background. We have to have some information. We have to have some data. And then based on those things, we think. So I think, Venerable, my view can be a little bit pessimistic in the sense, I don't think it really, augurs good for a particularly subject like Buddhist studies. But, if you are doing mechanics or, things like that, and fixing watches and, stuff like that, and also there are many other areas which I don't understand, so I don't want to claim, I know that AI is a marvelous thing, and, it could be useful medical science and stuff like that. But particularly when it comes to subject like Buddhism, where ultimately your own understanding matters, my question is, are you really responsible intellectually for this particular piece of information? Okay,
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor, for the clear explanation about the AI regarding the banana question. So kindly, I'd like to get the chance to Barbara Ona City, if you are ready. So now it's time for you to ask.
Thank you so much for giving me to ask question. So if time allow, I would like to ask two questions. So the first question is related to the concept of Buddha. So I would like to ask from two different perspectives. Firstly, in the Theravada Buddhism locate the Buddha a human being. But on the other hand, Mahayana Buddhism locate the Buddha a superhuman being, beyond human. But when we look at the early Pali Nikaya, not only Pali Nikaya, but also Agama, we can see that the Buddha belonged to both characteristics, not only human characteristics, but also superhuman characteristics. So my question is, why Theravada, Mahayana locate the Buddha differently? This is my question, sir. This is my first question.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Venerable, that requires fairly extensive answer based on history of Buddhism in two different traditions. Now, the one way to understand why Theravada is, the holding conception of Buddha as a human being. Basically, we have to understand it in the historical sense. Theravada, Pali, and also, as you said, the classical Chinese Agama, the suttas, report a stage of Buddhism that's very close to the life of the Buddha, time of the Buddha, where Buddha was perceived to be a human being. However, the good indicator is even within the Theravada tradition, even within the this earliest available tradition, if I may put it that way, earliest tradition, we can see that gradually Buddha is being made to a superhuman being and also to a deity. Now, for example, in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, Buddha says to Ananda, my body is so weak, it is like an old bullock cart, the running with difficulty. Jajjara sakatang vyakayati. Now, commentator Buddha Ghosha, when he is trying to comment on this, he says that although Buddha said to Ananda that his body is like this, he says that Buddha had only one wrinkle on his back. And even that wrinkle was seen only by Ananda, because Ananda was, the attending to Buddha's massaging or washing the Buddha's body or whatever. I mean, he was very close to the Buddha. So it is only Ananda saw that, and there was no any other sign of old age to the Buddha. Now, Venerable, we know that, this is a very different concept, because for the Buddha, if Buddhism is human nature, according to Buddhism is correct, Buddha being a human being, he is subject to Jati, Jara, Vyadi, all these things. But his marana is not called marana, because the death is not death in the conventional sense for an arahant. Because what death means to ordinary human being like us is not for the arahant, for the Buddha being an arahant. So therefore, but on the other hand, all the physical things are there. So therefore, what happened is, this how Buddha was turned into a supernatural being has to be understood as a phenomenon that took place with the passing of time, where people wanted their religious teacher to be a superhuman, high person, transcending the world. Now, if you look at, the good section in the Patisambhida Magga, in the Lokuttara Katha, there Patisambhida Magga gives an interpretation to Lokuttara. It's very interesting. The entire interpretation is that Lokuttara is something that goes beyond the ordinary worldly nature, not transcendental in the regular sense we are talking about God or anything like that. So therefore you can see that the very concept of Lokuttara was used in the earlier tradition. Buddha is like the living like a lotus beyond the corrupt world, something like that. However, subsequently, so therefore I think in order to understand how Buddha became such a being has to be understood with reference to the particular histories. Now, ultimately, of course, in Japanese society, Buddha became almost a savior god, and then living forever in Sukhavati Vyuha, and then living until the last human being dies. So the infinity. Now, if you look at really logically argue that the very concept that last human being, end of the world, will be meaningless. Who is the last human being? What is the end of the world? So which means that, in other words, we are saying that Buddha is eternal. So, this is far cry from, if we look at from early teachings of, the Buddhism in Pali, the Sutta and Chinese Agama, and to this later development. So therefore, I think what people needed was in religion, the help, support, protection. Now, this is why theistic religions are very popular in the world. Now you can see that at a certain point of time, Buddhists also being very ordinary people, they invented whole pantheon of God who can help you. But then in some cases, like in Japanese, I think Shin Buddhism, where Buddha was made virtually God, everlasting and savior God. So anyway, this is a very long story. made short. So in summary, my answer would be we need to look at it from historical point of view as the responding to or result of ordinary human nature needing protection and needing somebody who takes your responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can I ask you a second question?
I cannot hear you very clearly. It's very faint.
Okay. My second question is about interpretation. So, in present time, many modern scholars trying to interpret the rebirth in karma. So, in India, Ambedkar Buddhism did not accept rebirth in karma. So, and also Western Stephen Batchelor, he interpret the Pali Canon in different way. And then he also reject the rebirth in karma. In Thailand,
Reject what? Reject
sorry?
what?
Reject rebirth in karma.
Didn't get Abhidhamma?
No, rebirth in karma. Karma in rebirth. But this Sunday,
Puna.
this
I'm sorry, I
Sunday,
didn't get that.
number. Yeah, rebirth in karma. So, and also Thailand, Bhikkhu Buddha Dasa, he interpret dependent origination. So, according to his interpretation, dependent origination means only one present life. Dependent origination does not present past life, future life. So, according to his definition, dependent origination refer to only present life. So many scholars, not only Western India, also Myanmar, they try to reject a rebirth in karma, Patisandi, Punabhawa. So, so according to Theravada perspective, we can call they are Buddhist or not.
Okay. Venerable, I will start. I mean, I will answer your second part, which okay, you say rebirth and come. Now, if you take dependent origination, we know the traditional interpretation of Buddha Ghosha is Atite Hetavo Pancha, Idani Palapanchakang, Idani Hetavo Pancha, Ayatim Palapanchakang. So connecting past, present, and future. Now, that's where the Buddha Ghoshian interpretation. Now, if you read discourses in the, say, Nidana Sanyutta, in the Sanyutta Nikaya, and, other discourses, Buddha talks about avidya, paccaya, sankhara, and, so on, without making it very clear whether it is related to only this life or other life. Now, Venerable, I mean, like not only in Myanmar or Thailand, even in Sri Lanka, we had this, interpretation, and also in Sri Lanka, there was this one Venerable Jnana Veera, the, English monk who was in Sri Lanka 1960s. He also had this interpretation. Now, the way I understand this, I think the dependent origination process, avidya paccaya sankhara, and up to evametasya kevalasya dukkakandasya samudayo hoti, I think can be understood both as a phenomenon that is happening at the very moment of our life. Now, in that sense, avidya paccaya sankhara, sankhara paccaya vijnana, I mean, we must be able to see that this is happening within us. So, in that sense, evametasya kevalasya dukkakandasya samudayo hoti, the entire mass of suffering arises at this moment, in this life. Now, reverse order, evametasya kevalasya dukkakandasya nirodho hoti, if you follow the path. So, I think if you really understand and practice Paticamuppada, it can be very correctly interpreted to be pertaining to this life. However, the problem is this: if you want to say that it pertains only to this life and not to the samsaric existence, I think that is wrong. Because if our human life, at the end of our life, if we can be satisfied that we have become an arahant and terminated our suffering, then we don't need to worry about paticcasamuppada. So the paticcasamuppada process, we went through it, understood, and so our story is over. But the problem is, the moment I am dying, if I am grabbing this world and if I am coming back, then obviously paticcasamuppada process is needed for me. So I think the problem here is to say that exclusively this is only for this life, or exclusively this is for entire samsara. I think that is where people have gone wrong. Even this, scholars or, people who, I can fully sympathize with the view that paticcasamuppada process, how suffering arises right now in me, can be explained according to paticcasamuppada. If it can be explained according to paticcasamuppada, cessation also can be explained. Now, this is how someone becomes an arahant. Otherwise, if paticcasamuppada process cannot be terminated, how can you become an arahant? If tanha pacca upadanang passa pacca vedana, vedana pacca tanha. Now, every moment you have vedana, it gives tanha, then you have no escape. But at some point, some people are able to break the link. So for them, tanha doesn't give, so therefore I think exclusive assertion is, according to my understanding, what is wrong in this whole process, Reverend. Same thing with karma. Now, karma and rebirth. Now, a lot of people ask questions about skeptical questions. Now, it's very interesting. Even during the time of the Buddha addressed the skeptical people. For example, many people read Kalama Sutta, only the first part of Kalama Sutta. But read the entire Kalama Sutta. Ultimately, Buddha addresses this question. And also, I think, Veludwara or something, the way I put it. Now, if you look at carefully, then you can see that to Kalamas, Buddha never wanted to make it a point to prove. Buddha has never tried to prove rebirth, because there is something that we don't see. So Buddha never wanted to prove it. But of course, for the larger majority of the people, it was enough that the Buddha said, and also it was enough that their life experience. So, they accepted it. But there were people like Kalamas who were skeptical. But then Buddha's point was, whether you accept rebirth or not, do the good thing. So Buddha went to the practical side. Buddha never wanted to theoretically establish that no, you really have to accept that you have rebirth. We have to understand this. So Buddha really, when Buddha was talking to people who did not believe in karma and rebirth, Buddha did not try. Buddha did not waste his time to prove it to those people. Because anyway, we have to understand, the moment we believe rebirth, we are believing in something beyond our experience. Of course, logically, you can think that you will be born again. But also, we have a lot of empirical stories and evidence today. But leave aside those things. Simply, now what the Buddha did was, in two very good occasions, Kalamas and the other things, I think Veludwara, I don't remember, in the Majjhima Nikaya, you have this. Buddha said that whether there is rebirth or not, don't do bad things, do good things, and then you will win both worlds. If there is a rebirth and the other world, if you do good, then you will win that world also. So I think that is what we need to take here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. And now the last reason, Venerable Nanachara. So Venerable Nanachara, you are invited to ask the question.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor, for your sharing deep knowledge about the Buddhist scholarship. I truly appreciate it. It's clear that the field is going through the many changes these days, as mentioned earlier, including the technology. So I would really love to hear your thoughts on that. In your view, what are some of the main directions of Buddhist studies is moving in today? So the reason I ask is course, I've noted that the recent scholar was of the Bhikkhu bodies and Bhikkhu Nali also seems something new, and and it feels like that may be the part of the larger trend, sir. So, what is your view on that?
Let me make sure that I got your question correct. So, what you want to know is this rational type of interpretation of Buddhism. Where would it lead to? Or is that?
Yeah, I mean, the generally the trends, like in what are the some or the main directions of the Buddhist studies is moving in today's in the
Okay.
futures. Yeah.
Okay, Venerable, yeah, that's an interesting question, and also, I mean, we need to reflect on that, and I cannot give a kind of yes and no type answer, but your question I would understand in the context of modern world we are living in, the direction it goes, whether a philosophy like Buddhism, I mean, has any room for any kind of meaningful existence or any kind of meaningful message to the world. Now I think, Venerable, it's hard to summarize, but for example, now if we look at the world today, now just let me give you one example where now I am talking to you over online, and then due to some camera problem you don't even see me. I do see you, you look good, so and but you don't see me. Now, Venerable, we are still talking and communicating, but the world today is, I mean, representing something like this. We are physically not with people, we are virtually with people and talking. But for me personally, to be physically with people is very meaningful thing. Now, if I had the occasion to give this discussion amidst all of you, I think my vibrations, my thoughts, my feeling, my experience would be completely different. Now, another 5 minutes or something, I switch off my computer and I'm gone. You are also gone. But in other words, we didn't have actually human relations. Now, maybe somebody want to say, look, Asanga, you are very old-fashioned, this is the world. But no, I think ultimately human world becomes meaningful so long as we have human relations, human touch and anything. Now, whatever that, the takes it from us, then you are just existing by yourself. I mean, why do you exist at all? Like, I mean, I can be a university teacher, I give all my talks in online, never see a student, know nothing. But then why do I exist actually? I mean, if I am not existing in a context, of course, we create our own context. If the context is not good, I create. So, Venerable, I see this from a very existentialist point of view. Like what happens today is like sometimes I see youngsters, girls and boys, in your age, they walk on the road in their, the telephone or that gadget in their this thing, and whether they are really actually talking to somebody or not, we don't know. But by doing that, they make a statement. That statement is, I don't care about what happens to others. I just, by myself, I don't care about what happens on the road. I don't care about who are there on the road. It's me and my this thing. But Venerable, that perspective is very scary. So therefore, I don't know, I'm answering to you, but the modern, the world we are witnessing becoming more and more individualistic, private. Ultimately, we are affirming Atma in the Buddhist language. Now, if you don't affirm Atma, of course, then there is a generality, and there's a reason looking at Buddha perfected paramitas, not for himself, and all these things. I think the way we are moving to this individualism is again touches a very fundamental insight in Buddhism, namely Anatmavada. So I think we need to look at it carefully. I mean, That's what I have to say, but I don't know whether I really answered you.
Yes, almost. Thank you so much, Professor.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, thank you. Surely we should talk sometime.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Professor. Thank you
I
so
think,
much.
Venerable, we should wind up by now.
Yes, Professor. So
Okay.
according to our agenda, now the question and answer time finished. And therefore, according to our agenda 4, we have to express our gratitude to our esteemed speaker or the professor. And therefore, to express our heartfelt gratitude, I would like to invite our senior, Dr. Wisuda. Please gratitude to our professor on behalf of our participant and organizer.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, Honorable. We can hear.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear.
Venerable Visuddha,
Yeah.
Yes,
good
I'm
to see
here.
you.
I haven't seen you. I haven't seen your face. Yeah, I hope you see me. Okay, I don't know how to say. It has been a while for me not to hear from our esteemed Professor Asanga. We have the gratefulness to our Professor Asanga, especially me, because I was a student of him for almost 8 years. I spent 8 years when I did my PhD in Sri Lanka, so I have a very special memory with him. Before I give a words of thanks to him, one takeaway good message to us, I would like to remind all of my fellow junior students. And this is my apology to Professor Asanga. I couldn't fulfill his wish. He always encouraged us not just to study Pali. He always encouraged us to study Sanskrit and Tibetan and classical Chinese, so that we can make more conversation when we contribute our knowledge in Buddhist study and research. This is a reminder for us, especially for our now young generations of Burmese students. Thank you again, Professor Asanga, for reminding us to broaden our knowledge not only in the Pali study but also in the classical Chinese and Tibetan and Sanskrit. And okay, now let me thank Professor Asanga for his always readiness, generosity to share his knowledge to our Burmese monks and Burmese community. When I was in Sri Lanka, whenever we have a seminar or a small or big event in Makura Ramadambe, whenever we invited Professor Asanga, he was always ready and generous to come to Makura Rama to contribute his knowledge. And also when we invite Professor Asanga to come to Myanmar, he is always ready and generous to come to Myanmar to contribute his knowledge. And we can see his bond or his desire to make Burmese students expert in the area of Buddhist study. So for for all these, contribution for many years, on behalf of Burmese community, on behalf of the Burmese monk, we always thank Professor Asanga. We always wish Professor Asanga has a good health and his long life. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Venerable Visuddha. It's very good to see you. You seem to be expanding, right? Thank you very much, Venerable. Very good to see you. Kindly give my regards to Sayada Waggi.
Yes, sir. Yes, we talk a lot about you, sir.
I'm very grateful to Venerable Visitor for your expression gratitude to our esteemed speaker, Professor Asanga. So, furthermore, let me invite the Venerable Dr. Ratasara to express your gratitude to our Professor Asanga on behalf of our participants.
Okay.
Oh.
Can you?
So
Hello. Yeah.
PhD scholars, great to see you.
Okay. Thank you, Venerable. Thank you. Thank you so much for your giving me this opportunity. So I am Venerable Ratasara. So I didn't expect that I will mention thing about these things, but very likely I discussed with this research committee. So they have already said that Venerable Visuddha will talk about the Prof. Asanga, so that's fine. But I feel like one of his students, so also I am very right to talk about it a little bit. Okay. So yeah, so thank you very much. First of all, I really thanks to our Professor Asangat, and that we are extremely thankful for sharing this very excellent knowledge and academic work. This is extremely important for all, not only for the Burmese, but also all the academic membership. So this is really valuable. So I have a little bit. No, I don't take too much time, so let me be taking at least 2 minutes. So remembering with the Professor Asangat, I am also very proud to say about this things. So I have sometimes I study with the Professor Asangat. So sometimes we had discussions. So I just still remembering at the first day of the amphi. I started meeting with the Professor Asangat. And he make me appointments to come to Colombo University, and I went there to meet with the Professor Sangha. So this is very much the past time. I had a lot of Sakaya City, and I was forgetting who am I because then I met with him, and I just talk about what I'm going to do, and he is also very warmly welcome to student. And I show Professor, yeah, this is my proposal, so that is I'm going to write. So he just directly, read the whole entire passage of my proposal. Then what I want to notice in there, so Professor Asanga just read about, I just read very simply like relevant to my topic, like a Baiku Bodhi say like that, one Karuna Datta saying like that, and some other scholar. Then he asked me directly, why do you say that? So I remember today what he's saying, what he encouraging to the students. So that make us the more, remind us to investigate on the academic field, academic field. So this is a very, very good for us. Also, we see a lot of things as in the way how we approach of and at the same time, yesterday also we all the notice Venerable Osbo Seattle Damasami also mentioned about the Professor Asanga, especially rebuilding his PhD thesis, and he is also recommend all the students should read about the Professor Asanga the PhD thesis dissertation. So Venerable Damasami also mentioned and recommend how this board is approaching the combining with the Western and Eastern country. So at the same time, Professor Asanga is not only belong to the Western philosophy but also the Eastern philosophy. So this is very gratitude to us today. He came to sharing with us. And secondly, I just would like to appreciate to the vulnerable committee who trying to initiate of this program. This is very good. At least we can gathering together and sharing. We have the place where we can learn the knowledge at least. So this is also very good. So we really hopeful next year also we will be gradually doing the hand generation to generation. And finally also of course our all the participant member and different country of the different academies. So this is also we are really appreciate who come to participate of this program. So thank you very much, Professor Asanga, and this research committee and all the members. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venerable Dr. Sir. Good to see you. Thank you.
Okay, good to see you, Professor.
Okay, Venerable Sir, I also wish to thanks to you for your showing the gratitude to all of the participants and to all of our senior professor. So now that I also would like to say thanks the all of you to participate the activity and also present, especially the special appreciation goes to our esteemed the professor scholar, Professor Asanga Tilakaratne, for your insightful knowledge and very great experience. Your experience or clear guidance enrich our understanding of the knowledge, not only the methodology, but also the Buddhist study and wider explanation in the Buddhist study. So furthermore, I also wish to say thanks to all the organizer and all of the heads of the staff member. I want to say thanks all of you and all participants. So that is say that gratefully. So right now we are going to finish the agenda 4. So therefore, the last agenda that we have to write out our program. So to write out our program, we have to say Buddha Sasana Siddhanta Truth 3 times. So therefore, all of the vulnerable and also the Professor Asanga Tilakaratne and all of the participants, brothers, sisters, all of my friends, please recite the Buddha Sasana Siddhanta Truth 3 times to close our ceremony tonight.
Thank you very much, Venerable. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the participants. Thank you.
Okay. Buddha Sasana Siddhanta Truth. Buddha Sasana Siddhanta Truth. Buddha Sasana Siddhanta Truth.
Everyone.